A few months ago, I did a video testing if chocolate chip cookies were noticeably better if you used expensive ingredients as opposed to cheap ingredients. I had a panel of taste testers analyze everything, and most people leaned one way or the other. I was amazed at the comments that I got at that, because I think every single ingredient in that cookie recipe had someone arguing whether it did or did not make a difference. A lot of people felt very strongly that certain ingredients absolutely made a difference, and then there would be a lot of other people who felt very strongly that there was no way those exact same ingredients made any difference whatsoever. So I have to test it thoroughly, which means I am going to not only redo that test with basic ingredients and brand name ingredients, but I am also going to make one batch of cookies with one expensive ingredient substituted in for every ingredient in the recipe. That means out of the 9 ingredients in the chocolate chip cookie recipe, I'm going to make 11 batches of cookies, because one for each ingredient plus all of the basic ingredients and all of the expensive ingredients. So 11 batches of chocolate chip cookies. I'm gonna make them all, the exact same recipe, the exact same quantities of everything, and we are going to find out which ingredient or ingredients actually makes a noticeable difference to these cookies. This is so many cookies. Just like last time, I am using the recipe, the chocolate chip cookie recipe found on the Nestle Toll House bag of chocolate chips. There's a recipe on the back of it. That's what I'm gonna be using. I am not including chopped nuts, so I'm doing the recipe that doesn't have that. It has some instructions for high altitude baking that involve adding a little bit of water and reducing the sugars. I didn't do that last time, and I'm not going to this time, even though I'm in Utah and I am at high altitude. Just not gonna do it anyway. I'm just following it without that, keeping the test the same as it was before. So that's my recipe. These are my ingredients. You can see I have a lot of the basic ingredients because I gotta make like 10 batches with these. And this time, I'm not gonna be hand mixing anything. I did bring my mixer, which I always owned. I just forgot to bring it that day. There's a lot of cookies. Let's get started. First up, I'm gonna be making the control recipe, which is going to have none of the expensive ingredients, only the basic ingredients. It's gonna be a good time. All right, my cheap flour that frankly does great on pretty much everything I use it for. 2 1/4 cups. Here's the other thing everyone got upset at me for. They said, why are you using a weight measurement for flour? And I thought I did a good example of explaining why, but it's because flour is compressible, and there's a range from like most fluffy to most packed that you could get with flour. And I'm trying to make it fluffed up, and then you're supposed to use a knife to level it off, whatever, as if that's gonna solve all the problems here. Regardless of how careful you are, there's still a range of how much flour weight you could get with a physical measurement of cups. And so I am just taking one possible weight and accepting that that is always a possible weight to get, and I'm just gonna use that same weight with every batch. That way I know I have the same amount of flour. Some flour spilled on the scale. I wiped it off and it hit the off button, so it completely eradicated my measurement. So now I'm switching to a different bowl, measuring it there. I already know what it was. It was at 290. Gotta add my extra 1/4 cup. Great, and the number we're going with is 317 grams of flour. Fantastic. So I will say, I don't believe there was anybody who thought that baking soda would make a difference in the quality of the cookies. I don't think anyone said that. I did a search in the comments for baking soda. There were certainly a lot of people who mentioned all of the ingredients, but I think several people said, oh, baking soda won't matter. But because people mentioned it and said that it won't matter, I have to test and see if it will. I think you're right. I don't think it's gonna matter in the slightest. I don't think there's a recipe in this world where you would be able to tell the difference between off-brand baking soda and Arm & Hammer brand baking soda. I just don't think that's how it works. I have to test it anyway. Off-brand baking soda gets 0 points for box design though. That's terrible. Teaspoon of salt. I had some people who were suggesting that the brand of salt would matter. This is 1 teaspoon of granulated salt in a whole batch of cookies. I don't think the salt that you're using is going to make a difference. It's gonna add a little bit of salty flavor, might chemically interact a little bit with some things going on in there. I actually don't know, but there's no way that salt is like a vital ingredient here. I'm thinking now, probably could have gotten the cheaper, smaller bag of sugar. This is a 10-pound bag of sugar, and I really should have thought through the fact that I'm not gonna be putting a pound of sugar into every batch of cookies. I mean, that might be a really good batch of cookies, but that's not the plan. All right, brown sugar, also compressible ingredient. Gonna be measuring out the weight on that. There you go, 11 batches of cookies. To make it a little bit easier on myself and my ingredient pile, I did actually do a half batch of every one of them, but I still used the exact same recipe, just cut in half by weight where it mattered. 11 versions. I've got all the brand name stuff, I've got all the basic ingredient stuff, and I have one batch substituting each ingredient an expensive for a cheap one. So when we cook these up, we should be able to see what makes the biggest difference. I'm going to put all of these in the refrigerator overnight, and then tomorrow, going to cook them all up. I'll make the same amount of cookies, try and make them weigh about the same, cook them in the same temperature oven on the same type of cookie sheet, trying to keep everything as the same as I can to see if we can taste the difference from the ingredients. It is time to taste test our cookies. So here's what we've got, everyone. We have 11 varieties. 2 of the varieties are our standard brand and basic, where I use the cheap ingredients and the expensive ingredients. The rest of the cookies are one ingredient substituted out for the expensive, and the rest are the cheap. I'm not necessarily looking for like a ranking from 1 to 11. I just want to know if anything stands out. If you eat a cookie and you're like, something about this cookie is better. Maybe this, maybe just whatever thoughts, notes you have. We're gonna have some Post-it notes. You can write down thoughts. If you have one that you think maybe is the best, great. If you just think, I think the chocolate is a little better on this one, fantastic. I will say the 2 trays are basically identical. Whatever tray you're on, just go from that tray to keep it more uniform.
There's not one that's just like fully brand.
There is.
One's a fully brand,
One is full brand,
cheap,
one is fully cheap. Everything else is cheap, but with one expensive ingredient. Cooking is part of it.
That tastes like expensive baking soda to me.
Yeah, these ones taste similar.
I mean, it's the same recipe with the same quantities. Most of them, I think, are going to have no discernible difference. That's my guess. My concern is that the biggest difference will be caused by the frequency of chocolate chips in any given cookie.
Yeah, that's like all I taste.
Yeah.
I'm putting them in order so I can revisit. And I'm making notes on things that stand out. This one,
I can't tell what the one's weird.
yeah, does this recipe have more oil than most cookie recipes?
I got nothing. I can tell the difference with 7. I can tell that I ate it after all the others.
Oh, nice. It's the most recent one.
It's the most recent cookie.
Nice. Oh, that's important. When, like, if you're talking about
Yeah.
cookies, like the most recent cookie, that's important to know. You do not have to guess all of them or even try to guess all of them. Also, for anyone who isn't over full, you'll be very welcome to try individual cookie doughs and see if you can taste like, oh, I see how that's different, because those are actually going to be even more consistent than the cookies. It's just dough.
I'm assuming the chewiest one is going to have the best brown sugar.
I remember which one was
Here we
chewiest to
go.
me, but I don't know if it's the same on your batch. It should have been, but
I'm going to put
You know,
BS
artifact
for
of
brown
cooking.
sugar.
I think we are done with our preliminary round of taste testing, which may also be our final round of taste testing. Who has thoughts they would like to share?
Most of them like felt no difference in taste. I mean, visually, because some of them were greasier than others, but like it seemed like most of them had no difference in taste. The only ones I could tell that had the biggest difference were number 4 tasted more buttery to me. That's this one. I thought maybe number 8 was a little more granule and had a weird aftertaste.
I think 11 and 3 both tasted doughy. I don't know how else to really describe that. But 11 was doughy, but also had something similar to 5.
That's what I said.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of notes, and again, I don't know what most of them are, but 3 for some reason tasted saltier to me, which is weird, even if it is the one with different salt, which I honestly couldn't tell you right now. 5 I thought had a different texture. I did think it was chewier. 8 I thought had a noticeably different texture, but I couldn't really place what about it was different. I was just like, that's different.
5 and 8 definitely stuck out to me.
Yeah.
I think 5 maybe has a different flour. And I think overall 8 was my favorite. And I'm thinking it's because the butter's better.
I was actually guessing that 8 was the different flour, but I'm not sure. I do think it's different something important, and maybe that's what we're about to learn. Is, well, that's important at least, it's different. You guys, anything important to share? Thoughts? Whims?
I liked 11 the most, but it was probably just the way it was baked.
I agree. I liked 11 the most but it was also like the driest and like the least greasy. So
Yeah, it was like, it had like more like thickness to it.
Yeah, I thought 5 and 11 were similar, so I thought maybe one of them either had better chips or was not basic, but you thought the opposite, so.
Well, we're just gonna lay everything out in order, and you can marvel at what is different in
Okay.
each one.
So the brand was 11.
Vanilla was
I knew it!
I thought so too.
Nice.
11 was the recipe made all with brand, and 1 was the recipe made with all the basics.
Yeah.
5 was the chocolate
chips.
chips.
Yay!
4
Okay.
was the different flour.
What was up with 8? It was the brown sugar.
Brown sugar.
Hey,
I thought 3 was salty. It has the different butter.
Well, maybe it was salted butter?
I used non-salted butter on both. I checked. I was careful this time because I've made that mistake
so the
before.
expensive one was just cheating, and they were putting salt in their non-salted.
Ooh, maybe. Curious. If I taste this, does it taste too salty? Tastes delicious.
5, 8, and 11 were my favorites, and 2 of those had the special chocolate chips, and 1 was the vanilla. So for me, that's the biggest difference.
Okay, so I'm just curious if people can just anything that they noticed was better. Say those ingredients.
Chocolate chip and vanilla. For me.
Chocolate chip and vanilla. People can notice the chocolate chips and the vanilla.
I mean, in this,
Brown sugar, I think multiple people
yeah,
said 8
in this
was noticeable.
very narrow sample size, brown sugar seemed to have stuck out.
Okay,
The more expensive ingredients seem to cook better and made it less greasy.
it did,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
I saw
All right,
Joey on
this is interesting though. So baking soda, not surprisingly, no one was like, "Dang, that's better." What a shock! The regular sugar, the white sugar, no one seems to think 6 was anything special.
Because it's processed. Maybe.
Eggs, no one seemed to think eggs made much difference. I'm a little surprised on that because I think we've had eggs make a difference. Salt, I'm again not surprised. So flour, brown sugar, butter, vanilla, and chocolate. Apparently, those are the ingredients that actually matter. Go cheap on the rest of them, spend a bit more here. 11 batches of cookies later and a significant amount of taste testing and results that frankly I didn't see coming. Some of the ingredients I thought would make a big difference, like butter. I thought the better butter would mean a better cookie. Kind of wish I was in England right now so I could say a better butter makes a better biscuit, but we call them cookies, so no one really could tell the difference with the better butter. The things that did make the biggest difference, I was maybe a little surprised. Like apparently the brown sugar makes a lot of difference. I wouldn't have guessed that was that important. Some important, yeah, but you know, it was less of a difference than I expected to see. So which ingredients matter, which do not? I would say experimentation is important. If you have a cookie recipe you like, maybe every once in a while try a different fancier ingredient and see if switching that out makes a big difference. Can you tell what comes through different in your cookies? Overall, I'm most curious to see what you guys thought. Were you right? If you commented on that last video, were you correct about what ingredient would make the big or little differences? And is there anything that you still think I may have done wrong or missed in my experimentation process? Do I need to do a third iteration and test some other factor of how these cookies are made? Let me know down in the comments what you think and tell me if you think I nailed it or if I screwed up completely. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I love this series. If you've got more recipes that you want to see me try this brand versus basic, let me know down in the comments and maybe we'll give them a shot. As always, a very special thank you shout out to those who support us on Patreon. It makes a huge difference and we wouldn't be able to make these videos without you. If you're interested in joining my Patreon supporters, the link for that is down in the description.